Good. Well, I think we're live, so let's get started. But my name's Phil Stocker. I'm Chief Executive of the National Sheep Association. I'd really like to warmly welcome you all to this evening's webinar. I have to say that I love the title, Till We Meet Again. It conjures up image of some warlike war effort, really. And while I definitely don't want to trivialize war, you know, I do think that what we've been going through over this last few years with our departure from the European Union, a complete change in direction of trade, the restructuring of all of our regulations, rules, even laws around agriculture, environment, and food. There's so much going on at the moment, so much disruption, and then of course on top of all of that, we've had COVID, and I guess for a lot of us that have been working in this field for the last 4 or 5 years, it does feel like quite a battle, if not a real war effort. It does feel like a real battle, actually. And I'm aware that we're here in Northern Ireland. Well, you are anyway. I'm here in Gloucestershire this evening, actually. So it's a real pleasure to be able to join you from here. But I'm aware that this is a Northern Ireland webinar. And I've also mentioned a lot of disruption without uttering the words Northern Ireland Protocol as well. So but I think this evening we're going to leave a lot of that annoyance and irritation behind and get down onto farm, come right back up down onto farm on the day that should have been Sheep Northern Ireland, National Sheep Association Sheep Northern Ireland at the Tynan Estate in County Armagh. And I'd like to thank Edward Adamson for his committee, as well as Northern Ireland Committee, for all their perseverance and enthusiasm for keeping communications and activities going during a long period of lockdown where people just simply haven't been able to get together, and for organising tonight's webinar as well. I'd really like to thank the whole team for pulling this together. And with that, really, I'll pass on to David Wright. David Wright is from the Irish Farmers Journal, and he's going to chair this evening's proceedings. And I'm looking forward to seeing the farm this evening. It's a real shame that we've not been able to do that in real life, but I'm looking forward to a virtual look around and to all the speakers this evening. So thank you, and I'll pass over to David.
Okay, thank you, Phil, for that introduction, and thank you to Edward and the team, the local team in the NSA, for inviting me along this evening to take part in this event. Unfortunately, our normal event, which should have been this week, didn't actually happen because of COVID, but so there's still a plan in place. I think Edward was saying earlier on, a plan in place that we will have the event in early July 2023, so get that into your diaries ASAP. Look, we would really appreciate your interaction with us tonight. That's why the event's live, so please do submit questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and I will pull that together at the end, and we will have a fairly brief Q&A session with the speakers. The format this evening is essentially a video from the farm, which is run by Peter Munt and Kate Kingan in Tynan Abbey Estate, which is actually only a couple of miles from where I live here. I'm in Tyrone, but they're in County Armagh, but they're just over the other side of the county. So look forward to that video, and then after that we will have presentations from Eileen McCloskey and from Graham Clark. I'll introduce those speakers as we go along. So please do submit questions, as I said, and please do interact with us. And first of all, we will move to the video from Tynan Abbey Estate. So thank you, everybody, and I hope you enjoy the event this evening.
This is Kate Kingan and I'm Peter Mann. We're standing here at Tynan Abbey, which is an estate farm based in Armagh, about a mile outside the village of Tynan and very close to the border with Tyrone and Monaghan. The farm has been in Kate's family for 400 years. Unfortunately, we can't have you here to share with us, Tynan, with the NSA event in 2020. But we look forward to seeing you here in 2 years' time, 2023. On the farm, we have 250 acres of mature woodland, lake and fen, and 550 acres of grassland. As you can see behind me, a lot of this is large, extensive parkland. Approximately 300 to 350 acres are permanent pasture. And then on the perimeter is our more intensive grassland that we've been in the process of reseeding and working in more of a rotational grazing pattern in the last few years. All our farms have their own sets of problems. One of ours during the winters, we lose about 100 acres to flooding, and depending on the type of winter that we have, that restricts our grazing options in the winter. We have mixed grazing, as I was saying. We have our commercial mixed cattle that you can see behind me here, and a herd of Dexters that we supply to Marks and Spencers. We kill them at about 28 months. We also have 500 ewes here, and we've just come out of lambing in February and April of this year. If you can see the ewes and lambs behind me, you're probably wondering what sort of a flock we have here. And to be honest, it's a bit of a Cadbury selection box. We started out with Suffolk and Dorset, moved on to Suffolk Cheviots, and they form the large majority of the flock. And we also have a Romney flock here for lambing outdoors. We tend to lamb a little later in the spring, March, April time, mainly because our grass is a little slow to come. It still gives us enough time to finish the lambs off grass. And if the market's strong, we might sell a few scores as well. Because we're trying to expand our flock, our replacements aren't enough at the moment to keep up with our replacement needs. So we will be buying in the autumn, as well as keeping perhaps 140 of our own new lambs. This is Senan White from the Northern Ireland Sheep Programme. We joined the programme 2 years ago. After 6 years of building the farm up, we needed a bit of direction and a bit of mentoring. And Senan has been working hand in hand with us for the last 2 years.
Hello, good afternoon. My name's Senan White and I'd like to thank Peter for his introduction. I'm one of Caffrey's beef and sheep advisors, and my current role, I'm the Northern Ireland Sheep Programme Manager. The Northern Ireland Sheep Programme is an industry collaborative partnership between Dundee, part of the Don's Meat Group, the Irish Farmers Journals and ourselves at Caffrey. With the other programme farmers, we've been working with Pete and Kate over the last number of years to look at areas within the farm that can be progressed. And some of the things we have been looking at here at Tynan Abbey is EAD, improvement in breed performance, grassland management, and in soil fertility in particular. So looking forward to continually working with Peter and Kate for the next number of years in the programme.
Okay, everybody, and I hope you find that interesting. It's actually a great resource over there, and they've got a great farm. I'm a much smaller farmer, different scale. You can only wish they had that sort of resource. So look, we will come back to Senan maybe at the end, and a few questions for Senan there around the sheep programme and some of the key issues that he's been identifying, working with the farms over the last 18 months. So look, I'll move on to Dr. Eileen McCloskey. I'm sure a lot of you know Eileen. She's the chief technologist at Caffrey. Eileen has a wide experience in the sheep sector, and if there's anything that Eileen doesn't know about sheep, it's not worth knowing. So Eileen, we look forward to your presentation. Eileen's just going to look at some topical management issues on sheep farms at this time of the year. So Eileen, I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
David, thank you for the introduction. I'm not sure I can live up to all those things, but I'll try my best. Yeah, as I said, David has sort of said, just going to try and maybe cover some of the sort of topical issues I always say about sheep, it's doing the fundamentals really, really well, and that takes you a long way down the road, but sometimes that's maybe easier said than done. So really tonight, what we wanted to really do was focus people's minds on the jobs in hand at the minute. Now, it's difficult because everybody's going to be at different stages along this process, but we'll try to cover, from a general point of view. So really, things that we're going to sort of cover is sort of like land management over the next few weeks, sort of months. Ewe management, extremely important. And those two things then tie into really from a point of view, from a select and replacement point of view, because things that we do now will have a major impact on our lamb crop, this time next year. So it's always about thinking that, sort of bit ahead. And that's where we're trying to sort of place ourselves, that we're always ahead of the game and thinking of what comes next. So I suppose weaning has either been on people's minds or is on people's minds. And I'm conscious that some people have already been through this process, but some of us aren't there. And I suppose it's really to try and, think of some of the main key points that we really need to consider and that we really need to think about. And look, it goes without saying, any job in life, needs to be planned well. And when it's planned well, obviously, you'll get your the best sort of outcomes from it. But really, when we're thinking about weaning, we're always thinking about the lambs. And I've said to you, we want to maximize growth. We want to, maintain optimum health and minimize mortality. But when I think about this, I think about this from a ewe point of view as well, because weaning, we have to think about both the lambs and ewes. Ultimately, we think about the lambs first. We want them to grow well. We want to make sure healthy lambs, no losses. But we also have to think about the ewes in here, because her job obviously, is there's still a big part to play for future down the line in the farm. So when to wean, it's always a very sort of topical conversation. And, we have this general rule, 12 weeks, 14 weeks. If we're being honest, if we're being very, very honest, I would say wean lambs anything from 8 weeks onwards. But I think if we're being honest and we look at where people are in the averages, we're probably much further down the line. A lot of people are probably much closer to 16 weeks, 18 weeks, so I think it's difficult to put a set time on it. It's a moving target on farm every year. And it depends on different factors. And those factors are really, grass availability, what feed do you have on the farm, lamb growth rates, and ewe body condition score. And those latter two are possibly ones that we maybe don't, sort of think about enough. But those things are very, very important. And, we always say to yourself, how do you know when to wean your lambs? Do you know by looking at them, by looking at the ewes, by looking at the grass? We really need to give this a bit more thought. We can't necessarily just tell by looking at them. We have to use the tools that we have in place. Measure our grass, how much grass is available, what sort of grass budget do we have, do we know what grass is in front of us? We've got a very unpredictable season. We had a sort of hard start, sort of a good middle, and we're in a situation now, some of us have had plenty of rain, some of us not so much this last wee while. So those are all things that we have to think about. So I suppose maybe the first thing probably to really think about is, when should I wean my lambs? Probably as a farmer, this instinct that we have is that, the lamb's always getting nutrition when she's with the ewe. As long as she's with the mother, even if it's a tight years, tight for grass, she's always getting plenty of milk. And that's probably, there is an aspect of that is true. But the amount of nutrition that lamb is getting from milk is so small, and it's so minimal in comparison to nutrition that lamb is getting from grass. And we really have to try and switch that mindset and tell ourselves, once that lamb is past 6 to 8 weeks of age, it's growing from grass, not from milk. Yes, there is nutritional value from the milk, but the growth is 100%, fundamentally driven by grass. So then that's when we have to start to tell ourselves, well, if I have 100 ewes in a field and 180 lambs, they're all in direct competition. Those lambs and the ewes are directly competing with each other for grass. So that is going to be a main driver for me to think, when do I need to start getting lambs off? And I said, if things are tight, if we're getting it hard, people probably would never necessarily think weaning lambs as young as that. But from, I say, 8 weeks onwards, we have to think, I need to put the best nutritional grass in front of those lambs and sort of remove it from the ewes. So definitely grass and grass availability has to come into factor. And I know it's very hard to say, well, how much grass will I have in 1 week and 2 weeks and 4 weeks down the line? And it's not a topic for conversation for tonight, but it's definitely worth thinking about the benefits of measuring your grass, budgeting your grass, and knowing how much grass we have. We know we've had a difficult year. We had a difficult start. We had a great sort of peak, this boom of grass, sort of end of May, June time, but growth rates have fallen away quite drastically. Now, grass check, a very, very useful tool. Probably they've bounced back a bit better than what we thought, but there's still, you know, there's still a lot of shortage in comparison to what it was from previous years, and it's very unpredictable, especially across the province. We're seeing big differences. So if you think that's going to be an issue, get those lambs off. And really, we have to think about it in two really key stages. We need to direct that grass at the lambs now, so then we can provide it to the ewes later on. And this is really what we have to think about. The lambs need the grass now, get them finishing off the farm, because we need that grass for the ewes at a later stage. And you might think, oh, we don't need that grass to September, you know, October time, that's a long way off, but it's not, and we'll maybe bring that to a wee bit more focus. So, as I said, how do I know I don't have enough grass? How do I know that my lambs aren't meeting their targets? And it's really about growth fit. And again, this is really maybe to sort of concentrate your mindset, you know, do we really know what our lambs are doing on farm? Do we know what growth fits they're doing, or what they're actually supposed to be doing? If I said, you know, what's your ideal weight when you're weaning your lamb at, you know, 12 weeks, 13 weeks, 14 weeks, whatever that may be, do you have that weight in mind? And it's really about concentrating yourself, setting yourself targets. Are you meeting those targets, and measuring that? So, you know, I've just put up a few sort of figures here, and this is more lowland based in fairness now than a hill situation. But if we take a mid-season, you know, lambs, you know, mid sort of March on good quality grass, we've got targets here. Ideally, we're setting ourselves a target of 300 grams a day. So at my 8-week weight, that lamb would have been about 22 kilograms. If I'm weaning them now, 90 days, you know, this sort of figure, about 13 weeks, I'm expecting that lamb to be in and around the region of about 32 weeks. So then that also tells me if I can keep that growth rate up, that I've got, you know, that lamb needs about another 40 days to finish. So I've got that lamb on my farm for about another 5 weeks. So I'm getting a plan in my head. I'm getting a sort of plan in my head for the grass I need to provide for those lambs on farm, but also then when I need to start thinking about, you know, that ewe management. Now, 300 grams a day is a target that we aim for. I understand it's hard to achieve on some farms, especially if you're quite intensive and sheep only, and there's other factors that come into concern. But it's really, I suppose, just knowing what your lambs are doing, where they're at, and being able to target that. So if we just, for example, then, you know, if we say if we brought that down to 250, you can see obviously lower weights at weaning, and then we have, you know, those lambs will be on farm for about an extra 4 weeks. And if we're bringing that down to sort of 200 grams a day across the board, well, you can see the difference, you know, between 300 grams a day and 200 grams a day. Those lambs are on my farm for an extra 10 weeks. And that's massively important, because that extra 10 weeks makes a really big difference. It makes a massive dent in the resources that I have for my ewes coming up the top on time. And we always think that's so far down the line, it's so far away, but it's not. We need to be thinking about that. So we need to be thinking, do I have the resources to keep those lambs on farm? If I do, that's fine. If I don't, well then, do I introduce concentrates? Do I move those lambs on? The previous sort of year, the we were at this year, you know, it's probably more beneficial to move those lambs on to somewhere else. I've seen a presentation that had been done by Leslie Stubbins, and she said, you know, sometimes pride is, you know, sort of comes before the fall, as they say, and the whole idea of I don't want anybody else to finish my lambs, I need to finish them myself, you know, but really all you're doing is actually impacting your production system further down the line. So it's all about knowing your system, knowing where you're at, and knowing what you have in front of you. So lamb growth rate, again, will be a big key factor. And also, if we're measuring lamb growth rates, you know, at 8 weeks or 10 weeks, we'll know if those lambs are hitting those targets, and if they're not, again, an indication that we should possibly wait. So I've said here, if you don't know, you're guessing, and that is the truth. If we don't know where we are, if we don't know the growth rates of our lambs, if we don't know what we're doing, we really are only guessing. So I suppose a few just, you know, sort of key factors to take into concern, you know, minimize stress. A few maybe key factors to think about. We're very, you know, most of us will practice a sort of like abrupt weaning. Lambs are removed from the ewes sort of on a day, and that's them separated. But we've always, you know, there is things that we can do to minimize the stress and minimize the sort of like the check that we'll have on growth. So move the ewes, not the lambs. Okay, the lambs go back to somewhere they're familiar. It's less stress on the lambs, for example. Keep the ewes and lambs well separated immediately post weaning, because again, you want that sort of process to happen and there to be less stress. If the ewes are quite close to the lambs, obviously you will have that stress factor. Now, from a grass management point of view, you know, once you've got over that weaning process, we would recommend, especially if you're in a paddock grazing type system, have a leader follower system, and your ewes can come behind the lambs, eat that grass, clean it out, and move forward. But initially, post initially post weaning, make sure there's a good separation. And I know this is probably going to be an unpopular sort of suggestion, and I know it's very difficult, especially, you know, labour can be intensive and we're trying to do a lot of jobs at once, but where possible, we would recommend that you avoid, you know, doing a huge amount of other tasks. We're inclined to say, let's get all those ewes and lambs in for a day. Let's, you know, give the lambs every treatment that they might need, everything, you know, every sort of, if they need a vaccination, if they need a drench, let's do everything on the one day and put them out till a field. Here, you know, hunky-dory, that's great, that's a job well done. But actually, we probably cause a lot of stress there. When the lambs are stressed, there's probably a reduced, you know, effect from the vaccination or the drench we have to think about. So actually what you've possibly done there is, yes, we've maybe reduced from a labour point of view, but we probably reduced the stress and actually increased the check that we might have on growth. So it is worth thinking about how can we manage this. I would say if the lambs are due a worm drench, for example, is it possible to give those lambs that drench maybe a day or two before you wean them, to try and really reduce the stress and the check that there is on growth there. And then look, you know, it goes without saying, we really got to keep these lambs growing. You know, we got to make sure these lambs are put to the best quality pasture that we possibly can. At this stage, you want to take those ewes off, dry them off really well. You know, obviously it depends on the condition of your ewes, but as I said, we can put the ewes till a poor paddock, or the ewes, we can use the ewes as a follower sort of system. We have to make sure that we're actually putting those lambs into good quality pasture. That's really, really important, because we want to keep them moving. We want to get them off the farm as soon as possible. We always, you know, we're very conscientious about the situation, that the worm burdens that we have within lambs, and how massively it impacts, how massively worm burden impacts lambs. And we do tend to really focus a lot on nematodes at the start of the year, because we know that can have a massive impact on our lambs, you know, especially a big heavy infestation. But we can't take our foot off the pedal there, folks, because you know, especially in the years that we've had, you know, nematodes actually has really gone away, and there is still a worry there for maybe some, you know, younger lambs or later flocks or hill flocks that might be an issue. But, you know, once we get rid of one problem, we sort of, you know, we bring on another. And we got to start thinking about our other sort of worm groups there, and the likes of our stomach worms and whatnot. They are still going to be playing a massive, massive part. So we still got to be keeping on top of our worm burdens. If they need a drench, make sure we're keeping on top of that. Lameness, also a huge issue. You know, as soon as we start to see issue, you know, lameness is going to have a big impact on obviously feeding and grass intake and growth rates. So we have to really try and keep on top of that. You know, what may start off as scald, you know, ultimately then you can end up with, you know, sort of other issues. So again, keep on top of that. Some people may be considering finishing lambs on different crops, for example. And if so, that's brilliant. You know, obviously there'll be good nutritional value from point of view there from the lambs. I know it's not always easy, but what we would recommend is that if you were going to introduce those crops to the lambs, if you can introduce them pre-weaning, that's beneficial. If you can't introduce them pre-weaning, I suppose what we would also try and make sure is that there's a grass component there, or run back or something, just to try and ease that transition from a nutritional point of view, just to try and ease the lambs onto that, reduce any upset there might be, and reduce any check that there is a growth. But just things to think about and things to consider. So I said, you know, at the start, whenever I was saying, we always think, okay, weaning's all about the lambs. We put the ewes to pasture and we don't worry about her till September time. You know, her job's done for the year. And that is a very sort of dangerous sort of situation to get yourself into. And it's something that we have to try and keep on top of, and something that we have to be conscientious that, you know, her job is not done. You know, she's still got a lot of work to do, and we have to make sure that she's looked after well, and she's, you know, and she's treated well. And we talk a lot about body condition score, and anybody that's been at meetings with myself or any of our CAFRE and even sheep advisors, we talk about body condition score probably to the point where some farmers are maybe sick of us. But it is you know, it's such a useful, beneficial tool on a livestock farm. Body condition score can tell you a huge amount of information about that animal, about her nutritional status, and about the needs that she might need over, you know, the next sort of incoming months. And for a long time, we probably, you know, we've kind of had this idea, you know, body condition score up and down, you know, with livestock. But a lot of the research coming out now is saying that that's not actually beneficial. And really what we want to do is try and maintain that body condition score as close as possible throughout the year. And actually, rather than having these big jumps and losses in live weight or losses in body condition score, we want to try and sort of, you know, maintain that sort of nice steady sort of body condition score. So again, you feel like, God, this girl's giving me so many extra jobs. Like, does she not know how busy I am? But you know, I always say to farmers, do you body condition score their sheep? And they say, no, I don't do that. But then you say, oh, whenever they're in the pen, do you put your hand on their back? And we all do it. We can't walk past a sheep or a lamb without putting our hand on her back, feeling, you know, the sort of coverage that she has. And that in essence is body condition scoring. And really, you know, at weaning time, it's a fundamentally important time to body condition score your ewes, because it tells you really what she needs for the next 8 sort of 10 weeks to make sure that she's in the right condition for tupping time, which is ultimately going to dictate your lamb crop the following year. So we always have to be thinking about these things, you know, much further ahead sometimes than we really do. So body condition score at weaning time. And I suppose why this is beneficial is because we want to correct that body condition score slow and gradually. We've always traditionally, I suppose, thought, you know, we'll dry her off really hard, you know, we'll take the condition, you know, if she's losing condition, that's fine, you know, flush her pre-tupping. And ultimately, yes, that has its place, but actually it's only beneficial if you're going for small sort of changes, either up or down in body condition score. Ideally, what we want to do is actually for that ewe to recover that body condition score gradually, and over a appropriate period of time. And to put this into context, you know, to bring a ewe from a body condition score of 2.5 to 3.5, you know, you're talking 10 to 12% of her ewe body weight. And this can take anything, you know, sort of a 80 kilogram ewe, that's 8 kg. It's surprising how long it takes that to put on. And we really need to allow a good 6 to 8 weeks on reasonably good quality grass, good quality nutrition. If you're poor quality nutrition, it's going to take longer. So all of a sudden, you know, I've got that ewe that's weaned in the middle of July. It's going to take me another 2 months to actually get that condition on her. All of a sudden, it's the middle of September, you know, possibly to the end of September. And next thing I'm starting to think about tupping again. So really assess now, make sure you understand the body condition score and actually manage that ewe the best you possibly can to get her into the appropriate condition. So all this information, you know, we say know your body condition score of your lambs, know the weight of your lambs. You know, we say this is all massively beneficial, but I suppose it's only beneficial if you know it, if you collect it, if you use it. And I keep saying that sheep systems are really based on doing the fundamentals really well. But you have to know what the fundamentals are. You have to know where you are in your farm, you know, what your targets are, what you need to improve. And it goes without saying, you know, I've said, you know, driving performance with knowledge on your farm, we can make huge leeways and huge improvements on our performance and our profit by gathering some basic information on our farm and actually using that. And we massively underestimate, you know, the importance of the maternal driving factor and profit, and making sure that we have managed that ewe well, know our ewes to the best that we can, and use that as information. So I really want to maybe just think about some of the key things that we can gather around weaning time that we can use for benefit. I keep saying, you know, we can't manage what you don't measure, okay? We can't manage the system, we can't improve the system if we're not measuring your performance, if you don't know where we're going. So use weaning information, use that information to your advantage. Use the information collected at weaning to inform your decisions. I've said inform your breeding decisions. Use the information that you've collected about your ewes, about their milk, about their lamb growth rates, about different traits maybe at lamb, and use that to inform your breeding decisions on your replacements. That should be the driving factor. It shouldn't be the biggest, best, most breed type suitable lamb in the pen. It should be the lamb that has come from a mother that has weaned, you know, 2 lambs on target with the appropriate growth rates with no issues. That should be the driving factor behind your replacement. And likewise, culling policy. You know, what is our culling policy? Of course, we're going to cull for physical incorrectness, you know, whether that be feet or udders or teeth. But do we ever think about, you know, removing those ewes that are just not pulling their weight? We talk about sustainable farming. You know, every sheep on our farm has to pull her weight nowadays. She has to justify her place. She has to justify the use of her resources. That's how we farm sustainably and efficiently. But how do we know that if we don't have the information? You know, so we have to gather, you know, simple data, ewe weights, lamb weights, wean weights, And this can really inform me to the ewes that are actually pulling the weight. And as I said, we do talk a lot about obviously buying performance recorded rams and knowing the genetic ability of our sheep. But this data, this information about your flock, about your female flock, is a really good insight into the maternal ability, that genetic ability of your flock, and that will help you select those animals that are superior. So as I keep saying, know how your flock is performing. Knowing some of these fundamental things, and we're possibly going back a bit, but your ewe traits, ewe weight, ewe mature weight, lamb numbers, milking ability, these are fundamental impact actually driving the performance of your flock. Health, lameness, for example. You know, you don't want that, you don't want to keep that ewe or lambs from that ewe that's always lame. You don't want to keep lambs from a ewe that has poor milking ability. They're not the lambs that we want to be selecting our replacements from. So use this information. So what should I use this information for? So as I said, retain the best performing ewes. We possibly have everybody will have their own culling policy, and that might be, as I said, and physical incorrectness, but it might be an age. She gets 5 years and she's out, or she, there'll be a rhyme or reason for why you decide to cull that ewe. But it's a lot of the time it should be, on her ability to perform. It's always about replacing. We think a lot about replacement rates, and we probably think a lot about, is our replacement rate too high, is our replacement rate too low? But as long as we are replacing underperforming ewes with animals that are more superior, then our replacement rate is doing its job. We're doing a good job there. So it's always about making sure that you're taking those ewes out of the system that aren't performing well and replacing them with an animal that's more superior. And that animal that's more superior is based on you knowing the growth and the milking ability of that animal's mother. So that's really important. That will always fundamentally improve growth rate, and that's really what we want to do. We want to select those lambs that grow well from grass. And again, improve grassland management. Because if I'm getting everything else right and I still can't get these lambs to grow, well, then that makes me think, do I need to go back, take a look, restock? Do I have issues from a grassland management point of view? Because it's not always going to, it's either going to be the genetics of the animal, the nutrition that's put in front of them, the environment. So we have to try our best to get all these decisions to come together and get them right. So really, how do we manage performance? Collect this information, understand the results, invest in the technology that you may need. That could be a pen and paper, that could be, an EID system or a recording system, whatever they may be, and make it work to the best you can do. Because as a general rule, the most successful person in life is the one who has the best information. And I really just put this up here sort of as a finishing slide, folks, because it's to really highlight, is this important? Because as I said, we need to know we're keeping the best ewes on farm, and we have a target for ourselves, their lowland ewes. We expect her to wean 1 kilogram of lamb per kilogram of ewe. So if I have a 70 kilogram ewe, in reality my target is to get her to wean 70 kilograms of lamb. So that's 2 lambs at 35 kilograms each. There will be sheep in there that will be doing that, and there will be sheep in there that won't even be doing half that. But unless I collect this data, I don't know. How do I sort of improve my performance for the following year? I have to know this data, and this is just an example of some of the information in the data that I can collect. If I collect my weights, I know my ewe birth weight, I know my weaning weight, I have an idea of my slaughter date. So again, I know how long it takes me to get those lambs off farm, my pre-weight slaughter, and my carcass weight. So this is just the sort of information that you can gather that will then drive performance on your farm. And that's really all the few things that I wanted to cover. I suppose it's maybe more a case of if we've got any questions or if there's any sort of topical issues that people maybe want to have a chat about.
Okay, thanks, Eileen. And again, please encourage you all to, if you have a question, please submit it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. I appreciate that you would interact with us this evening, and if you have any burning questions, please do that. So, Eileen, I will be back to you at the end whenever we're finished the presentation. So, thank you. So our final speaker this evening, just in this session, is Graham Clark. Graham is from Ulster. Graham looks after the marketing side on the wool. So hopefully Graham has got some good news for us. For obviously Wool's been difficult for a long time, but hopefully the thing is turning a bit, Graham. So I'll hand over to you, and I look forward to your presentation. So thank you, Graham.
Thanks, David. Evening, everybody. I'll just share my screen. Everybody see that okay? Yeah, great. Okay, so I just wanted to do a quick recap before I talk about some of the things we've been working on and also the outlook for the wool market. So I think it's fair to say, and it's no exaggeration, it's been definitely the most challenging 12 months that we've ever experienced as a business. COVID's had a severe impact on the global wool market, and it effectively closed all our markets last year. Some of these markets were really severely affected and continue to be so, to be fair. So the travel and hospitality sectors, which in a normal year would use quite a considerable amount of our wool, have really been effectively closed for the past 12 months. So those kind of markets will be contract carpets going into hotels, casinos, cruise ships, airports. They're just not ordering them at the moment. It will get back in the next 12 months, but it's going to take a little bit of time. This time last year, we had a bit of a problem in that we were sat on over 10 million kilos of unsold stock from the previous season. So this is a group, obviously, so the British Wool is a group. This was clearly a massive issue in terms of cash flow, and then also in terms of selling the wool itself, because the markets, as I said, were closed. So in the last 12 months, we've had to make some quite difficult decisions, and as a group, we've cut costs to the tune of 1.5 million, and that's involved closing 3 depots in mainland UK. So in terms of where we're at today, we move into the new season. We had our first sale of the new season earlier today, and I'm pleased to say we've got no real stock hangover. Well, we haven't got a stock hangover this year. So we've effectively sold 30 million kilos of wool in the last 12 months, and that's the most wool we've sold for a heck of a long time. And it's certainly more wool than we'll be selling in the next 12 months. I'm also pleased to say that prices have started to recover. They certainly aren't where they need to be to enable us to make returns that we should be making, but we are quite confident that they'll continue on this upward trajectory. If you look at the graph on the right-hand side, it shows British wool against New Zealand wool. This is always a key thing that we track. Our wools are quite interchangeable, so New Zealand wool and British wool, they've obviously got a lot more wool than we have. But you can see we're tracking above New Zealand wool. And you can see, although it's only a little increase, it has actually started to move forward, which is encouraging for the rest of the season. So as I mentioned earlier, we've made some cost savings, but despite this, we've not affected the service that we're offering to the producer. This is crucial. If anything, we've actually improved them by abolishing all onward haulage costs on any wool delivered to any of the Ulster wool drop-off points. So that's about 20 odd drop-off points across Northern Ireland, where farmers can now deliver the wool and not be charged any onward haulage for this season's wool. So we've been communicating that over the past few months. We're also working on some exciting new developments, which should help drive sales and also the price over the next few years. And I'll talk about those in a little bit more detail in a moment. So one of the big issues we've had as a business over the past 20 years is that the number of buyers that we have at our auctions has shrunk dramatically. And what this has meant is that we've had a distinct lack of competitive tension at the auctions, which in turn has had a negative effect on the wool prices. So if you look at the chart below, it goes back to 2001, 2002, and you can see we had a really good spread of buyers there. And you know, the biggest 2 buyers were only making up probably less than 30% of all the wool sold. And you can see as we've moved forward, the 2 bigger buyers are becoming more and more dominant. A lot of companies went out of business, and there was also a lot of consolidation, a lot of buyouts by the larger wool merchants, bringing us to 3 years ago when we really peaked in terms of those 2 buyers were buying the best part of 90% of our wool. So it's one of our main objectives has been to try and reverse this over the past 3 years. So I said for the past 2 or 3 years, we have been addressing this, and we have had some success in this. So we've managed to get 2 new major buyers over the past few years. These are the first buyers we've had in a heck of a long time at our auction. One of them is a company called Andean Sky, and in the last 12 months, they've bought just shy of 2 million kilos from our auctions. All of that will go to China for various different products. We also introduced an agency buyer about 3 years ago, and they've just done shy of 1 million in the last 12 months. What the agency buyer allows us to do is allow smaller organizations to purchase at the auction. It also facilitates other strands of business that we have, Harris Tweed and that kind of business, and also some Chinese business. And we have another buyer on board for this season who is likely to take in excess of 500,000 kilos. So this, these aren't huge volumes given the amount of clip that we do, that we actually handle. But what this does, it really does help the competitive tension at the auction. The more competitive tension we've got at the auction will lead ultimately to better prices for the wool and better returns to the producer. So I'm sure you're all aware of this one, the government support. So we've been working really hard with the NSA and the Ulster Farmers Union to try and gain some support for sheep farmers in Northern Ireland. And as you're probably aware, we have actually had some success, which is really good. I think the details are going to be released over the coming months. It's slightly delayed, but in principle, DAERA have agreed to pay £1.40 per ewe, what they call COVID compensation for last season's wool clip. So although the wool check has been disappointing, to say the least, for this year's wool, there is some compensation on the way to make up for that. And I think this is a really good example of the industry working together for the better of sheep farmers. And working with yourselves, the NSA, and also the Ulster Farmers Union, coming together, it's given us a much stronger voice, I think, than doing it independently. And I think this is something we certainly hope to build on over the coming years, particularly in Northern Ireland. As a point here, we've not had the same success with Westminster or the other devolved nations. That's very much fallen on deaf ears, even though we have had conversations with ministers in all different devolved governments. So driving demand, this is obviously key. We need to drive more demand. We do need to do more to drive demand. We need to find new uses for wool, and we are working on quite a lot of different areas. So the three main areas I'll talk about: we're launching an e-commerce website next week, traceable wool, so looking at tracing the origin of the wool back to the farm, and also new product development, which is always key to driving new demands for any product. So we're launching an e-commerce website next week. So this is what we call a marketplace website. And what we're doing here is we're selling our licensees' products direct to the consumer. By our licensees, we run a licensee scheme where we check the wool usage of individual manufacturers to make sure they're using the correct levels of British wool. We have an Ulster wool. We have different standards set out that they've got to hit, so we make sure they hit the right thresholds. I will say at this point, our Ulster wool brand is very much the producer-facing brand, where we're targeting our producers. The British wool brand is where we're targeting consumers. So you can probably hear me now using the two interchangeably, really. But the British wool brand is what we push into the consumer because that's where most of the wool comes from. So this website, as well as helping to drive demand for the wool, which it definitely will over time, we're also receiving a percentage commission on every sale from the manufacturer made on this website. So this is a fully transactional website where you can go on and actually buy a variety of different British wool products. So we plan to promote this heavily in the next 12 months or so. We'll be linking it into our consumer social media following. So we've got a social media following of over 114,000, which is pretty decent size for the size of organisation that we are. And this is growing on a monthly basis, and we've got some aggressive plans moving forward. But we want to link this into our e-commerce website so we can actually start driving sales of British wool products. So when we launch, we're initially launching working with 10 licensee partners, but we will be increasing this once the site goes live. We didn't want to start with too many. We want to get it launched, see if there's any teething problems, and then launch it to a wider audience. So the plan is to launch this next Tuesday at the Great Yorkshire Show. So there'll be quite a lot of press coverage on this, hopefully in the coming weeks, and you'll see exactly what we're doing. So in terms of what we're selling on the website, so we're selling men's clothing, women's clothing, duvets, pillows, mattress protectors, dog beds randomly. It's one of the more quirky products that British Wool goes into. Knitting yarns, throw and insulation. So there's a really good broad range of different products there. So we are ticking every box, and we're really demonstrating how diverse British Wool is and Ulster Wool is in terms of the different products it goes into. But we can also target a lot of different people, because people that maybe want to buy a wool jumper maybe don't want to buy bedding, and vice versa. So we're giving ourselves every opportunity to make a success of this from a sales perspective. So the website's also a revamp of our current website targeting the consumer. So we talk about why wool is the sustainable choice. So we're going into a bit of detail there about the environment and why wool is such a wonderful product and consumers should be buying it. We have a section on our farmers. So we have 3 farmers that we focus on there. We've done some nice video footage of those on farm. And what we tried to do there is bring it back to the consumer and show the consumer how hard British farmers work and what they're doing to bring this natural product to market. And we've also got a Meet Our Sheep page as well. Consumers love this. We find this on social media. Anything to do with sheep, any cute pictures of sheep, the diversity of the sheep that we actually handle wool from. The consumers love it, so we're integrating that into the website as well, which I'm sure will be quite an engaging section. So why are we doing this? So the benefits really, as a business, this gives us a new revenue stream that we can obviously grow over time, and that should help returns to the producers. It's a great place to point our social media following to when they're looking for British Wool products. Time and time again, we get asked, where do we get British Wool products from? We can never find British Wool products. This website gives us that forum to point a consumer to this website, and we know hand on heart that everything on this website is British Wool and has the right levels of British and Ulster Wool within it. So we know, we really are driving sales. It will help drive sales of British Wool products, and also it allows us to play a very active role in this. Because of where we sit in the supply chain of wool, sometimes it's difficult to play too much of a proactive role from the consumer point of view. This website really turns that on its head and allows us to really sell direct to the consumer and get some engagement going with the consumer, as well as we do throughout social media. And it's also something really tangible that we can show our members how we're striving to create consumer demand for their wool. So we do get criticised, for not doing enough to try and sell the wool products. This, I think, is something really tangible to show how we are actually doing this. It says this will be live in the next 4 weeks. This will be live in the next 4 days. So that's incorrect. So the next thing we're doing to try and drive demand and increase the returns is we're offering traceable wool moving into the new season. So we are launching this as a trial. We're trialing this with 3 brands in duvets, pillows and mattresses. So the customers specified the wool types and also in some instances geographically where the wool needs to come from. And what we're doing is we're taking that wool into the depots, handling it separately, and we're providing full traceability to the individual farms. So as this is a trial, we're doing it across 3 of our larger depots that have got the most space: Bradford, Newtown and South Malton. This should sell in excess of 500,000 kilos through this scheme, and there's lots and lots of potential growth here. And I see us implementing this in Northern Ireland within the next 12 months as well. This will deliver extra money back to the producer by way of a premium payment, and this will be over and above their normal payment. For this traceable wool scheme, the brands are willing to pay a premium. So the more wool we can get on this traceable scheme, the more we can sell this to end brands, the better the returns will be. This is also us talking directly to brands as well. They're really interested in talking to us about this scheme. As I said, we're launching it with 3 companies moving into the first year, but they are quite substantial, big wool users. So next season, if the trial goes as we expect it to go, i.e. success, this should be rolled out across all depots. And we'll be looking for brands in Northern Ireland and also in England who are interested in traceable Northern Ireland wool, so we can start paying these premiums to the Northern Ireland wool producer. And finally, on new product development. So this is something we've been doing a lot of work on over the past 2 or 3 years. We've actually got 58 live product development projects on the go at the moment. And this is many, many more than we would have in a normal year. But this is what we want to do moving forward. We want to be looking for new demand. This is how we're going to drive the price, and this is how we're going to drive the returns to the producer. So some of these are normal, what we call normal or mainstream products. So building on existing product ranges or new product ranges, but similar kind of products. But we're also looking for brand new uses of wool. It's important we don't neglect what wool goes into, but it's also crucial that we find new uses for wool as well. So some of the highlights, which will be coming to fruition in the next 12 months, include 100% wool carpet range. This is with a leading supplier of flooring in the UK. Huge, they are the market leader basically. This will contain wool from Northern Ireland as part of the blend. And longer term, we see this as a massive, significant volume for the carpet wool. And this is good because, you know, we do need to sell some of the wool. It really does go into the carpets, and it really is more fit for purpose on carpet. So we cannot neglect that side of the business. We've also got new mattress and apparel ranges coming to market, working with existing and new licensees. We're working on a new top-end yarn range with a premium British spinner. They've never used our wool before, but they'll be selling to the likes of Prada, Ted Baker. And again, that's all good for brand association, but there could also be some good demand on that as well. So looking at more innovative new ideas, we're working with an organisation looking at acoustic panels using wool, and we're testing the performance of that, and they're looking at rolling that out. We got some funding along with Huddersfield University to look at face masks and also air filtration and how wool performs. We're about halfway through that project, and we're hoping to have something ready for sale by the end of the year. Wool pellets and also other agro-textile products. There's quite a lot going on in this area at the moment, and we're very much at the forefront of it, working with manufacturers. We've also just submitted a proposal for a major project with Bangor University. This is looking for brand new, we can't talk about it because we're under NDAs, but it's a new and innovative use for wool across a number of different sectors. We've submitted this last week, and we're hopefully going to hear in the next couple of months whether we've been successful, but that could be quite exciting. That's the kind of thing that will take quite a while to develop, but as I say, it's exciting, and it's a brand new use for wool, which is what something we are looking for quite actively. So just as a summary, as a business, we are doing many things to promote and grow demand for producers' wool. I think it's fair to say we're probably doing more now than we've ever done in the past. We've got the new e-commerce website. We're targeting consumers through our growing social media channels, and that'll be filtered through the e-commerce website. We've got the traceable wool scheme. We've got this 100% wool carpet range, which is going to drive some significant volume. We're working on more new product development projects than we've ever done before, particularly looking for new innovative uses of wool. And we're also working on new business opportunities in China with brand new users of British wool. China's been quiet for the past 18 months or so on the back of COVID, but things are really starting to pick up, and we are seeing some really good potential opportunities over there within the next 12 months as well. Thank you. So I'll stop sharing.
Okay, Graham, thank you. And I will invite yes, all our speakers to come on, as well as I think Johnny's there too. Johnny Farmer is the regional chair of the NSA in Northern Ireland, so Johnny's there as well. So look, I've lots of questions there. So, and again, if you have anything, please do just tap it into the Q&A button there. But I'll be spend 10 or 15 minutes on questions. We'll wrap it up fairly tight. So I'll run through some of these questions. Senan, I'll come to you first, because obviously you work with Kate and Peter at the Tynan Abbey Farm, so you know the farm. So I have a number of questions around what's going on there. I suppose maybe it's a starting point, Senan. Just you're 18 months into the sheep program with ourselves and the Farmers Journal and Dumbia, and maybe just could make a quick comment around what were the first things you changed in those farms, or what's the number one issue or number one or two issues that you found on the farm when you started out that program? What were the basics that you wanted to change whenever you went to those farms, or is Is it not as simple as that? Is it many issues, or is it one or two issues?
You never know the answer, David. There's a lot of issues, but like, it goes back to the basics: grass, and it goes even back below that, there's soil. So that's where I started off with every farm. Some have soil tests done fairly recently. Other ones, I'm encouraged to get those done. That's the fundamental thing. Grass is king with sheep production. You have to get the fundamentals right. So that is really where we're going with that. So once we get that there addressed, simple thing like lime, and I say in the program so far, David, there's over 1,000 tonne of lime has been spread in the last 18 months. So it's been a real change, and some of the farmers, very good level already. Others have made a real improvement just simply by doing that there. So the message we want across through the program is get the basics done right, and soil testing be the first thing. So that's really the first thing we've done with them all. With that.
Yeah.
Then obviously is the grass as we move on with that.
Yeah. And I think it was mentioned in the video that they're looking at doing a bit of reseeding. Why would you, I suppose, fundamentally, why would you do any reseeding on a sheep farm? I suppose that's maybe the
well,
place.
I would say that's something like I'll just maybe paint the pictures best. Obviously, it'd be Kate and Peter can't be here tonight, unfortunately. So Tyne Abbey is an unusual place, and I say it's a brilliant place to see, and it's just I hope everybody gets there. It is a farm in transition. It's actually not in transition. It's at a very early stage, should I say. So there's a lot of development that's being done, and I would say with the scope that farm has, reseeding, in fairness, probably won't be a priority. It's there, but it's not something we're really worried about as such yet. It'll be down the line to say we'll have the goals over a certain period of time, but really getting the infrastructure in to get the best out of the grazing that we have already. So I'll say reseeding, I know it's mentioned, but it'll probably push back a wee bit, David, to be honest,
Yeah. And there was a bit of mention about mixed grazing. Obviously, there is a I think research from memory used to show a performance benefit from mixed grazing. Is that something that they would pursue at Tyne Abbey?
It will be something, and literally just with the timings of things, all the farms in the programme have the opportunity to do an animal health plan, and literally just last week Tyne had we were out socially distancing obviously, but we had our animal health plan done with our local vet. So that is something that we will be pushing forward. And yes, it's just that Tyne Abbey, as I say, there's huge potential to increase numbers. So really at the minute, we're just trying to get with Pete and Kate to get the system set up. So really, because of such a big scope at the minute, it will be something down the line again, but hopefully maybe a couple of years' time, that will be something that the visitors will be able to see.
Could I say, David, just for the audience's information, before Kate and Peter took the farm back in hand, I don't know how many years, for decades, the place had been let out just for grazing, and it was extremely run down. It wasn't great when they started. They took on a mammoth task.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's correct, and it's obviously a farm that I know myself. And look, we all know once we connect a farm for 10, 20, 30 years, well, it's going to get run down nutrients. That's the reality, and that's no different than any other farm, I suppose. The final question then, Sam, for you was just around the suitability of Romney in that situation. Is that really the ewe type that's best suited to that farm?
Oh, that's a good question. And again, as I say, 18 months into the programme, obviously Peter and Kate have been at this 6 or 7 years. Kate herself is a New Zealander, and I suppose, that was an influence coming in as well. To say, obviously, I had no influence on sheep choices at that stage. They're there. However, for some of that land, the parkland type farm that they have, and I suppose it's, the Romneys possibly have a position there. It's the scope is there for several different types. You can do an intensive system on some of the better land. Maybe the scope for the parkland type thing would be where the Romneys would come in. It's a relatively small number compared to the overall size of the farm. So yes, give it time. I think it's as regards the labour thing. Certainly they have a great positive attributes, for that, because certainly the whole lambing on their own is certainly something to, it's an experiment, but it is something that they're investigating anyway.
And maybe Johnny, just kind of come to you there if you don't meet yourself. Like you're also working on a farm with a lot of ewes. I think are you running Romneys as well, Johnny? Am I imagining that? But certainly you've got a lot of ewes there. And you've
I was a wee bit reluctant to jump in and extol the virtues of the Romney sheep there, but no, from a labour point of view and working with large numbers of sheep, there's in my mind 2 or 3 breeds that would suit if they were going down an outdoor lambing low input system with large numbers of sheep. There's about 3 breeds that tick the box, and Romney's definitely one of them. We would be sitting at intervention rates at lambing well below 5%, and some years below 2%. So you'd have no problem lambing 1,000 sheep with just one individual on not a lot of hours at lambing time. And as well as there's some myths about lambing percentage with Romneys and weaning weights and things. We get really good results if ewes are managed the right body condition score, really good lambing scans, and really good survivability outside. There's also a bit of chat about prolapses and things like that. Like any breed, it's a lot to do with grass management at the time of lambing and general farm management. So we would be lambing on pastures that about 1,800 kilograms of dry matter, which is equivalent to about a can of Coke, and that would be in good years, and in many years it's a lot less than that. But we tend to put condition on their backs before lambing, and then kind of in a year like this year, whenever grass is in short supply, we can use that as a buffer. And a Romney, I can't speak for other breeds, but I know a Romney can manage to milk off her back a bit without going down. But no, they work for us, and we lamb quite high as well. I know Kate isn't in a high situation, but we've experienced lambing them up to nearly 1,000 feet in April. So no, they definitely work for us. But like I say, if that was a situation of going down an outdoor lambing route, there's probably 2 or 3 breeds that would spring to mind.
Yes. Okay. And Eileen will be giving off to me later on that I let this discussion move into talking about breeds of sheep, which is not where I wanted to go. But so sorry for that, Eileen. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the person first and foremost. We all appreciate that. It's much more important about the person rather than the breed of sheep. So I'll take that chastisement later on. Maybe just when you're talking about, Johnny mentioned body condition score there, and a few questions around body condition score for you, Eileen. I suppose in my look, I'm getting old now, but in my youth, I always understood that you had an opportunity to manipulate a body condition score of a ewe, but you're saying now keep the body condition score consistent throughout the year. And so is the whole concept of flushing, is that out the window? That was one of the questions as well.
Yeah, and you're right, David. And I'm not saying that it's massively moved away from that, but we always sort of try to say, okay, we can afford to drop body condition score here and put it back on here and take it off here. But really, a lot of the work that's coming through, and some of you will be familiar with a lot of this work, and Liz has spoke to the group maybe on different occasions, and actually, not keeping that body condition score gradual, reducing these huge changes and body condition score throughout the year is actually beneficial, because it takes a lot of effort to put that back on, and it's hard taking it, it's hard on you taking it off. So definitely what we're finding is actually maintenance is actually much better. Now, our theory behind losing body condition score was all about, I suppose, nutrition, and could we save a bit of money on nutrition? Could we reduce the requirement for nutrition, lose a bit of body condition score, and then pick up compensatory growth? But actually, what some of the research is telling us is now that actually has longer term effects, maybe 1, 2, sort of 3 years down the line. So definitely this idea of maintaining it. And I don't want to say flushing is a thing of the past, but flushing is beneficial if a ewe really has a small move to do. If she needs to go up half a condition score, for example, if you've used really thin ewes coming in at 2.5 and you need to get them to 3.5 and you flush them for 2 weeks, it's never going to get you to where you need to be. And that's the problem. So there is a place for it if that ewe needs that wee bit of extra condition. But really what we're seeing is it's much, much, much more beneficial to actually have that condition put on over a longer period of time. Plus the body condition score and the nutritional status of a ewe is what will impact ovulation. And you want her to be in that body condition score earlier on in the season. You want her to be at that right condition, that, you know, the body is in that mindset, you're kickstarting that sort of whole process of ovulation. You don't want that to only be triggered, you know, 1 or 2 weeks before she really goes to the ram. So it has a place, but it's only for very minor, it's only for small changes. It's never going to get that thin ewe in the right place inside 2 weeks.
Okay, yes. In terms of body condition scores, well, just around you know, would you recommend weaning your hogget ewes a bit earlier than your mature ewes? I think was a question as well there.
Yeah, I think that would definitely be beneficial. We know from different new research that's coming out that our younger ewes are responsible for a big percentage of the later lambs at weaning time. Almost 40% are those younger ewes. So, you know, they've got a harder job. So we can definitely see, and especially if you're, you know, even mating ewe lambs, for example, those lambs need, you know, your ewe lambs or your shearlings, your first time lambers, there's definitely evidence to see that there's massive benefits to actually, you know, trying to maintain that body condition score. So definitely weaning those lambs that wee bit earlier. As we said, after 8 weeks, you know, the lambs have got a peak of milk really as what they're going to get. You know, from there on, they're just, as I said earlier, in direct competition. So there's definitely benefits, especially those younger ewes, David, to try and wean them a bit earlier and manage them a bit better. And actually, you know, because we're seeing that there's definitely impacts on body condition score. Some of the research is actually showing that a shearling that, you know, is gradually gaining weight, you know, gradually maintaining body condition score, actually scans better than those animals that have lost body condition score and had to put it on quite rapidly. So I would say wean those animals and bring them back, you know, into condition slowly and gradually is going to be beneficial.
A question there, Eileen, just around how do you accurately assess, I think it was already asked, around milking ability of a ewe accurately and easily and accurately, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I suppose, is it more a ewe effect or is it a nutrition effect? I assume it's a bit of both.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I mean, the answer is it is both, you know. You know, I always say a ewe's ability to perform is 50% genetics, 50% environment, okay? She has to have the right nutrition, but she has to have the genetics to take advantage of the nutrition. So yes, it will fundamentally be driven by good quality nutrition, but if the genetics aren't there, she's not going to have the ability to produce the milk. So we do have to try and select those ewes. And the best way that we know that a lamb will drink over 50% of its milk, you know, within the first sort of 4 to 6 weeks of its lifetime. So that lamb's growth rate between the first, and I know we say 8-week weight because it's difficult to really push farmers from a 4 and a 6 week weight, you know, with a young lamb. But we know that if we can measure that lamb growth rate and that sort of first 6 to 8 weeks of life, it is a real driving factor of milking ability. And what we're trying to do here is find the best ewes within our flock. So if all those ewes are eating the same grass, well, then the lambs that are growing better is that the ewe, that ewe is the one that's been able to convert that grass to, you know, to milk better. So it's about selecting those superior ewes within my flock, David. If they're all getting the same, lambs with the better growth rates, you know, from birth to 8 weeks, are the ewes that have the ability to convert that nutrition to milk.
Yes, okay. And there was a question around Crosby. I think he's probably been taking the hand a wee bit, but just around your table and 21.8 kilos.
No, I was going to type my message and I thought, no, I better just answer it. Crosby, you know that we're not as good as getting the targets as good as yourself. Look, that was just data I pulled off as an average across the board of the 300 and something lambs that were slaughtered last year. And yes, we are above, and we know that. We should be killing those lambs, you know, slightly later and obviously below the target, but that was 21.8 was the average slaughter, you know, sort of slaughter weight across something like 370 lambs. But yeah, I'll take that rap on the knuckles. I deserve it.
I'll not ask you was the breed wrong.
I was trying to tell the truth. You know.
Okay, Eddie, 100%. And Graham, just a few questions, a couple of questions here for you as well, Graham. Maybe just you mentioned your first seal today. Was it how would you describe that seal, Graham? Was it buoyant, or is it steady, or better than expected, or
it was steady. To be fair, this time of year, the sales are not that buoyant this time of year. There's limited demand this time of year every year in the wool market, and it was a limited offering as well. So it was Yeah, it was okay. But we do anticipate it to improve quite considerably over the next few sales.
You mentioned there about your e-commerce website, Graham. Just I get my head around this. Are you a sort of a go-between between a sort of a wool supplier of a wool product supplier, and you're offering a sort of a site where people can go to buy wool products, and you're getting a bit of a cut of that? Is that the right way?
In essence, yes. So we've developed a website. We've set it up. We've chosen the manufacturers to go on there, so the consumer can go on. They'll place an order for, say, a woolen jumper. That'll be fulfilled by our partner who's selling the woolen jumpers on our website. It's a bit like eBay kind of scenario, but it's fully integrated, and the consumer has a dialogue with the brand as opposed to British Wool. So if there's any issues with returns or any questions on deliveries, we don't want to be fulfilling orders. That's the last thing we want to be doing. That's way out of our remit. So it's facilitating. But the reason for doing it really was because we're constantly asked where we can buy British Wool products from, and we can direct them to some of our licensee partners. But they'll also sell other products as well. They'll sell maybe other kind of woolen products, or maybe even synthetic products in some instances. So we can't control that sale. By having this on this one website, we can filter all questions, all inquiries to this one website. We've got full control. We know anything that's sold on that website will have good levels of British wool in it.
Yeah. Can you just comment around the whole China thing? Obviously, there was a lot of hope put in China. Maybe it's a bit of a lesson for us all not to put too many eggs in the China basket sometimes. That if they go off the market, it can be painful, and I've seen that in some other sectors. Is that essentially what happened in the wool market over the last 18 months? Or it's not as simple as that?
No, not at all. I mean, there's only about 25% of our wool goes to China. So if you compare that to the Australians, it's about 90% of their wool. New Zealand, 60-70% of their wool. We're not reliant on the Chinese market at all. It does have an impact on demand. It does have an impact on prices. As anything, if you're selling 25% of your product into a specific market. But no, we're not over-reliant on China in any way, shape or form. Still 50% of the wool goes to the UK market. So the UK is our strongest and most important market. We are trying to grow demand in China through working with new users of British wool. And this is really to drive new demand. As I said, one of the issues we've got is that we don't have enough competitive tension. So people trying to buy the wool. By driving new demand, new users, we'll create that competitive tension over time.
Okay. And just a question there around any pressure from suppliers or that your next one's down the line for you to do any work around carbon sustainability or to do any proof around carbon sustainability? And I suppose I broaden that question out as well, Graham, around is it frustrating for you that wool can get caught sometimes in a whole thing around sustainability and veganism and whatnot, that it is a sustainable natural product, but yet it sometimes gets caught up in this other stuff that actually isn't, people haven't got the right view of the wool, of the sheep industry. Is that a frustration?
Well, just answering the first question on the carbon footprint, we're not seeing a huge amount downstream coming back, whether it be from brands or wool processors. I think it will come. I think it's definitely going to come. And there's certainly more demand for traceability, and then that's the next logical sort of movement that way. In terms of frustration, I think there's a lot of noise created by the likes of PETA and vegans and all these kind of movements. I think if you actually read, what we do is when there's something happens, such as PETA or vegans or whatever it is, we monitor all social media and all kind of press. And what we tend to do is look at what kind of comments are coming back. And generally, the British consumer doesn't really fall for it. They are quite well educated on farming issues. I think we've got a role to play in that. And I think we try and do that through social media. One of the aims of social media is to help the consumer understand about farming and how farming's really good for the environment, has a positive impact on the environment. It's not intensive farming like in other parts of the world. We don't practice that in the UK. So how it has a positive impact on the environment. We've got things on the website, the new website, which we'll be promoting that. And we'll continually be doing that on social media as well. It is important to get that message across, particularly to the younger consumer. I think there is a move for people to want to understand where things are coming from, they're buying, whether it be food or whether it be end products. And this is why this traceability thing, I think, is going to be quite big for us moving forward, as consumers want to know where things are coming from. Wool ticks pretty much every single box from a sustainability point of view, particularly when you're going up against synthetic products and vegan wool. It's nonsense. Vegan, actually plastic. You know, a lot of these vegan products, it's plastic. It ends up in the oceans, landfill. You know, it's greenwashing, isn't it? And there's a lot of that going on at the moment. And I think it's important that we do put people right on that.
And just a final question there, Graham. Sorry, one more. In terms of maybe around that as well, what, you know, in terms of garments and carpets that is sold in the big retailers in the UK, what percentage of the wool in that is British wool, would you reckon? Would you have any view on that, or are you competing with exporters from other parts of the world who are putting in wool products into manufacturers?
So British wool gets blended quite often, because there are cheaper, I mean, believe it or not, there are cheaper wools out there. So wools from China, wools from Europe. There's no British wool equivalent in Europe. So typically they've experienced much lower prices than producers in Northern Ireland, because they don't have a British wool equivalent, trying to push the price and selling it at an auction. So they're very much at the behest of the wool merchants, who obviously pay the lowest price because it's the lowest input price. Sorry, repeat that question. I've gone off on a bit of a tangent. Is your big manufacturers in the UK, are they using a lot of British wool, or some of them are? Some of them are. I think increasingly they're asking for it, which is great. One of the positive things about COVID, if anything positive can come out of it, is the fact that we are getting more and more manufacturers coming on to us asking for British wool. So we've had people that have never used British wool before. A lot of them will use merino wool. So if they want to do a garment that's next to skin, it would really be a merino wool kind of product. So from Australia, South Africa, or some places like that. But we are increasingly seeing people asking for British wool, which is fantastic, and it bodes well for the future as well. It's difficult to say what percentage of British wool is in all kind of retail products. It's not huge, I wouldn't have thought. Okay, folks, that's really it from me in terms of any questions that I have to deal with. Does Edward, Phil, or Johnny want to sum up? Whoever wants to put their hand up, I'll pass over to them. If you don't put your hand up, I'll have to call it a day. But nobody's biting. So,
if you're looking for someone to speak up, I'm never shy of speaking up. But I'd just like to follow on from you, David, and thank everyone for pulling this together and for participating tonight. And from what I've seen, I can't wait to get to Peter and Kate's farm next July. It looks fascinating. I'm sure from what Senan was saying in terms of some of the development going on there too, you'll see some changes over this next year, and there'll be some interesting innovations and things to look at. So definitely looking forward to it. And again, it feels really good to bring people together this evening, just to keep people in touch with what's going on. It's a real shame we couldn't have been there today in person to see it, but yeah, from my perspective, I'd just like to really thank everyone for participating this evening. So thank you.
Okay.
And good night.
Right, David, just thank yourself, Senan, Eileen and Graham for taking part, helping us out. I think you all did a really good job. And maybe one person who at the minute is faceless, who pulled the whole thing together. I'd like to thank Becky for pulling it together. It probably wouldn't have happened without her. So thank you to all involved.
Okay, I look forward to seeing you all in July 2023 down the road at Tynan. So great. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Good night.
Good night, everyone. Bye.